Thundarr, I'm E-Lightning, and this is Sports Storm. Today we'll be continuing our top 5 all-time series with wide receivers. Let's start off with 3 honorable mentions. Who are yours?
My first honorable mention is Don Hutson from Green Bay. He was back in the old times. He was back when the NFL started. He was really the first great wide receiver. You could argue to have him in the top 10, but I feel like all of his records have been broken. He's kind of in that 10 to 12 range in career receiving yards and career receiving touchdowns. So I have him in my honorable mention. Didn't want to go without saying him. My other honorable mention is Steve Largent. Played his entire career at Seattle. Kind of was the first great slot receiver. Almost always led in receptions for the season. He also has to go here at honorable mention. I wouldn't put him in my top 5, but you can't go without regarding him. My final honorable mention is Marvin Harrison. You could obviously put him in your top 5, but I have him and Tim Brown flip-flop. I think Marvin Harrison, the one thing that distinguishes him and Tim Brown, they have very, very equal stats. Marvin Harrison, I think, played one more year, but Tim Brown didn't get to play with a Peyton Manning. That's the one thing that I believe separates the two. I have Marvin Harrison at my 6th. You could definitely argue to put him in your top 5. Who are your honorable mentions?
My honorable mentions at number 3, I have Steve Largent, as you said, first best slot receiver. Now his touchdowns and yards are not as gaudy as some of the players higher on the list, and that's what keeps him back in my opinion, but still a very good receiver. Then at number 2, I have Cris Carter. I think you could easily put him in your top 5 if you wanted to revolutionize the sideline catch, but I just feel like if his touchdowns are not even top 10. I mean, his yards are pretty good, but I just feel that touchdowns really holds him back. Number 1, I have number one honorable mention is Tim Brown. I think you could put him in your top 5, but I give the edge to Marvin Harrison and another player you had in your honorable mentions, only because Tim Brown didn't have as much longevity as some of the other guys, and also his stats kind of hold him back. But even though they're still pretty gaudy. Now, who are your top 5?
Number 5, I have Tim Brown. I don't think his stats really hold him back. Because, the only reason Marvin Harrison is above him is because he played a year or two more, and he had Peyton Manning as a quarterback. I
don't feel like there was quarterbacks should detract from it too much. The fact that
I'm just saying if you
I'll explain Marvin Harrison when it's my turn.
No, I'm just saying when you flip the script on the two players, if you put Tim Brown on that Colts team, I think he'd be a top 3 receiver. But I feel like since he wasn't paired up with an amazing quarterback, I have him above
Ken Stabler, though?
What?
Didn't he have the Hall of Famer Ken Stabler?
No, it was back in the 80s. He didn't have Peyton Manning.
I'm not saying he had Peyton Manning, but
they're very similar. Both 6 foot, 175.
Doesn't matter.
I know. All right. At number 4, I have Cris Carter. Played the most of his career with the Vikings. Kind of was the first so-called to say smack talker in the league. He was had some off the field issues, but he transcended the game from this old route running his everything style to more of the spectacular catch, flashy plays. So I have him at number 4. He's top 5 in touchdowns and top 15 in receiving yards. I have him at number 4. And at number 3, I have Randy Moss. You could argue to have him at number 2, but I believe since him and Terrell Owens are both number 2 and number 3 in receiving yards and touchdowns in a career. But I feel like the one that Terrell Owens leads in, he has more of a marginable gap. So I have Terrell Owens at number 2. They're both outstanding receivers. I believe, both should be in the Hall of Fame. I'm not sure if they've both been inducted yet. But at number 1, it's fairly obvious. Jerry Rice. He crushes in career receiving yards, crushes in career touchdowns, won the Super Bowls. He played for almost 20 years. There's no other way. There's no way you can't give it to Jerry Rice.
Number 5, I have Don Hutson, only because Don Hutson was the best receiver until Jerry Rice, and all of his records stood for 30 to 50 years. That's amazing. And Jerry Rice really busted it open. But until that point, he was the best, and I feel like that legacy award deserves him. Plus, some of his records still can't be touched. He's still top. It hovers around 10 in every statistical category, which is amazing considering it's been almost 70 years since he played. And at number 4, I have Marvin Harrison. Now, I put Marvin Harrison on my top 5, and at number 4, only because route running, he's the best route runner of all time, and route running is one of the most important things a receiver possibly can do. If you can't run routes, good, you're not going to succeed in the NFL. Marvin Harrison was the best all time at one of the most important things. That's what gets him in here. Plus, the Super Bowl kind of edges it for me over some of the other players on this list. Number 3, I have Terrell Owens. Now, Terrell Owens and Randy Moss are interchangeable. As you said, 2 and 3. Now the reason I'm ignoring the marginal gap is because Randy Moss, has more postseason stats. I feel like postseason stats, you weren't really considering them, not to throw shade when you were making your rankings. And I feel like the postseason would put Randy Moss ahead of Terrell Owens. Now, Terrell Owens is still a hyper-athletic receiver. That's why I have him at 3, and still very good. Number 2, I have Randy Moss. Reason I just explained, he just edged Terrell Owens on the postseason stats. He did get to play with Brady, but I still feel like Randy Moss, if you slotted him into anywhere with any quarterback, would still produce very good numbers. At number 1, it's obvious, Jerry Rice leads in every statistical category by far. Longevity's there. Still records that are unbroken. Now, he did get to play with Joe Montana, but that shouldn't detract from the fact that he leads in everything.
That's it for us today at Sports Storm. Like,
comment,
subscribe.
Peace.